like my favorite Onion article that came out in the last couple of years was like the one titled that men are 5,000% less effective in a fight than they think they are. Right. And I would just say that for everything. And I think that people's ability to like what happened to debate? What happened to the ability to understand that opinion is just opinion?
My name is Dave Glaser. I own Fit Life Champions in Denver, Colorado. About 3.5 years into my business, I needed a change in my own life. I was losing passion for my business and I was losing passion for serving clients. I tried jiu-jitsu for the first time. It was the challenge that I was looking for, both mentally, emotionally, and physically, because I was pretty much at rock bottom. And I know that when we combine our clients' purpose with the right program designed specifically for them, we can help them reach any goal that they set forth.
Welcome back to the Aspire Higher podcast, everyone. I'm honored to be joined by Robert Wunderlich. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, David?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks again for joining me. Just give us a little bit of background about who you are before we jump into our conversation. I originally heard your episode with Traver Boehm on the Uncivilized Man podcast. He's a buddy of mine, and our connections go way deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I've been in the jiu-jitsu community for in Colorado for just a little over 16 years now. I started under Dave Ruiz at Colorado Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 2004. I've been reffing and competing and teaching jiu-jitsu for that whole time. So that's kind of where my realm of jiu-jitsu really kind of takes place. And then I have a master's degree in anthropology from the University of Wyoming. I was a professional archaeologist for about 18 years in the state of Colorado and surrounding states. So yeah, I've kind of had as you get older, you collect a lot of things, right? So at least monikers.
Sure. I hear what you're collecting is more like degrees and 2 degrees in black belt and jiu-jitsu too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm a second degree black belt. I got my black belt in 2012. So actually about to celebrate my 8th year as a black belt next month. And yeah, it's like is it's crazy how time goes, right? When you're younger, it seems like it can't go fast enough. When you're older, it's like you can't seem to slow it down. So especially with I've got 2 kids. And my daughter's going to be 6 years old in January, and that's blowing my mind. She lost her first tooth a couple days ago. So it's like, man, you hear it all the time, like they grow up so fast, but they do, man. It's like you snap your fingers and it's gone. So and I'd say that's attributable also, that can be also seen in jujitsu. Like I remember the day that I was like, dude, I'm gonna get a black belt in this. I was a white belt. I still remember the day, like, dude, this is gonna be something I do the rest of my life. And I declared that, and I made that statement in my head, and I was like, at the same time, that like overwhelming like feeling of like, holy moly, it's gonna take forever.
Yeah.
Like, and then it's just that constant seeking that black belt. And that took 8 years. 8 years is a long time. But now I'm about to double that time, and having been in a black belt for 8 years, that blows my mind just knowing that, man, that as much time as it took to get one, that much time has passed already. And in that sense, it's just it's a crazy feeling, man. Like it goes like that. It literally just passes by so quickly. So for all those that are hitting plateaus or hitting like all those other times that we have those times in jiu-jitsu where we don't feel like we're progressing enough, but really that's just a reflection on ourselves more so than it is on anything else. It's just ourselves convincing us that we're not progressing, when in reality we just need to change our field of focus and change our view and understand that, like, okay, where I'm adding these things up in this maybe less noticeable area, I'm still adding pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And my daughter turned 18 this year. So you snap your fingers and all of a sudden they're an adult, and she starts calling me out on adult stuff now, as opposed to just like, oh, you're not letting me spend time with my friends. Well, okay, that's fair when you're 13, 14. Now we're talking about real stuff as adults and opening up the conversation of like, Maddie, how do you want our relationship to be like now that you're 18?
Man, I having a kindergarten and a pre, my son's 3, so um, having those 2 kids and thinking about like how differently our realms are in parenting, is also something that like blows my mind. Like, whew, those days will be right around the corner, man. Like she's gonna be 6, she'll be 10, like that, and then like, man, it's gonna be just along for the ride, bro. Just trying to take it one day at a time, right?
Amen to that. Yeah. My daughter is actually the reason I'm in jujitsu. I watched her go with her stepdad for a couple years. And when I recognized that CBJJ West was around the corner from my business, I started with their boxing program. And then I felt comfortable enough to get on the mat. And I thought, shoot, if my 13-year-old daughter can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely. I see a lot of, for us, I'm the owner and, co-owner with my business partner, Ruben Morgan, at the Academy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Arvada. Like that's something that we pride ourselves on, he and I, like we pride ourselves on the fact that like we want whole families to train, like we want entire families to train. It's not just the kids coming in, it's the entire family coming in and enjoying something that they all can relate to and all learn from, and all progress as human beings. I think I'm a firm believer in jujitsu being something that can absolutely change your life.
Agreed.
It's just an avenue to, it becomes I tell my students this, like, avoid asking questions like why, questions like why can't I get this, like why can't, why am I not better, why, like those are like, you can hear even the tone of my voice, right? Like
Yeah.
those why questions are like a downward trajectory. It's like digging in something on what you're not good enough at. Whereas like instead in that realm, I ask them like, how can I be better at this? What is it that I need? Or what questions, how questions, what is it that I need to make this better, instead of why can't I get this? Like it's a closed loop if you say, why can't I get this? Whereas if you say something like along the lines of like, well, how can I better get this? Or, maybe I just haven't gotten this yet. I just need to put in more work. But yeah, man, to like it's ever expanding. And when you have that ability to create a why, getting back to those why questions, like you get whys for why you do something else differently. It becomes your why that you'll eat healthier. It becomes your why, why you'll sacrifice going out and partying or drinking with your friends. It becomes your why to like, hey, is it eat out, 6 times a week, or is it that I pay my jujitsu, tuition fees, and I go to do jujitsu? It's the why for the sacrifices that you make in life.
Yeah, true. Very true. And that helps us in a personal growth dimension across the board. I do recall having a conversation with a jujitsu teammate just the other night on Wednesday. I'm training 3 days a week now, and we were talking about the Saturday morning class, which I really enjoy. It's a no-gi class, and no-gi is not a strength of mine. I prefer the gi, but he's like, "Hey, why is the Saturday 10 a.m. hard for you? Because you want to go out Friday night?" And gosh, it's been a really long time since I've gone out on a Friday night. And that 10 a.m., if I were to go to that class tired or hungover, and I don't drink anymore, but if I were to go in either of those capacities, I might get hurt. I might actually not understand what, to your point of like, why am I not getting this? Okay, well, you're prioritizing a late night Friday and you're so fatigued mentally and your central nervous system isn't adapting to what you're supposed to learn on the mat on Saturday. There's a good answer to why we're plateaued, why we're stuck.
Well, and it also becomes a why for the thought processes that we start to have, right? Like, it becomes your why to be more mentally aware of your surroundings. It becomes your why to, like, man, maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself. It's, like as adults, like kids are learning constantly. Their little brains are just sucking in information, especially like kids at my age. They're just taking in information all the time. And I think as adults, we create this, we create this avenue where we feel that we must, that we should, that we see someone else and it's like, well, that person's only been doing it 6 months longer than me. I should be able to do what they do. And it's like, okay, well, that person might train 12 times a week, and in 6 months you train 3 times a week, and that's 2 years of difference then, right? Like literally, that's like for what you will get in 2 years, they've done in 6 months.
That's right.
So like that's why like it's so important to me to illustrate that jiu-jitsu really is a personal journey, just like life is a personal journey. And to not, like I think that this is applicable for right now in our current climate. It's November 6th 2020, and we have some things going on in the world right now. Like I had this discussion with Ruben yesterday, like leaving space open for understanding that like people are people and they're still going to make mistakes, man. They're still going to have, they're still going to have thoughts that lead them to one way. And then, given space and opening up space for someone to be like, man, I've never even thought of it that way. Or man, my thinking 2 months ago is so much different than it is now. Like we're so quick. Like I think in certain circumstances, we're so quick to judge. I think that in the social media spheres, it allows us to like, because we get to be disconnected. As much as we're connected, we get to like, you and I are on the Zoom call, but I could literally call you an asshole to your face right now. And like, what are you gonna, like, there's not much that you can really do about it, because whereas like the social norm for me to just randomly call you that to your face in person would be so much different. So like that disconnect to just rail on people on social media, is it blows my mind, man. And how that's eroding some of the the ethics of our society, to really think that you can say anything to anybody, like I've been punched in the face. Like I've been punched many times, both in classes, well, not outside of class, but mostly in classes, but still, like I've been punched. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to get crushed by another human being. I know what it feels like to basically have my soul leave my body, from someone's just complete dismantling of me. So and that's like getting back to the conversation of jiu-jitsu. That's why jiu-jitsu is so important, because it reminds people of that. It reminds people that they're not, like my favorite Onion article that came out in the last couple of years was like the one titled that men are 5,000% less effective in a fight than they think they are. Right. And I would just say that for everything. And I think that people's ability to like what happened to debate? What happened to the ability to understand that opinion is just opinion? And that like you and I can have differing opinions, and we can discuss those differing opinions. And I might take something from your opinion and be like, man, I haven't thought of it that way. And you can take something from my opinion and be like, and we can both agree to disagree on some major point, but then we also come to a little bit closer of an agreement in another area. I don't know, man, like with my education in archaeology, and having been in a grad program where, it was your cohort and that's all you did. Literally, you would be given a reading, and the next time you went into class, you and your cohort would argue over what that person said. not even argue, but debate, like say, well, this is what I think they're really getting at in this, statement. And then another person says, well, I didn't really read it that way. Like, I think it was this. And getting to some semblance of that again is so important, like in the grand scheme of things, man, like we all have a lot, like all of us normal civilians, right, have a heck of a lot more in common than, I would say the people that we elect to office, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can completely understand what you're saying, that like we're protected by the screen. So we're just going to we're going to sling our opinions like they're fact and dismiss the fact that the person across the screen from us may have a differing opinion. And from your perspective, education and then education through jiu-jitsu, which would you have envisioned you'd been more likely to succeed at when you were younger? Archaeology or jiu-jitsu?
Well, I mean, I was one of those weird kids, man. And I'm not, I hope none of that previous conversation, and you can edit this obviously, right? But but that's not, that's an apolitical statement. It's not about politics. It's more just about being decent human beings, like
Correct. Yeah.
treating each other with respect. But to answer this question, whew, man, when I was younger, I played football. I went to Arvada West High School. We won a state championship there with Dave Logan. Like he's kind of in Colorado, a very famous high school coach, especially now with what he's done throughout his career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mullen and Chatfield and yeah,
Cherry Creek now, and so and I mean he's the voice for the Broncos, like, and has been for a very long time. So um in that sense, like I knew that I was always going to want to be competitive. I was always competitive in that sense. But I also, like, after football practice, the only reason I bring that up is because after football practice or before football practice, like once classes ended, I'd go home and watch the Learning Channel or Discovery Channel, like when the Learning Channel was actually about like learning. This is the mid to late 90s.
yeah, we didn't have
Like
YouTube.
we didn't have YouTube, and like they had, like on the Learning Channel, they had shows like that were literally titled archaeology, like where you would go and you would get educated about things. It wasn't just like all this, like many of the channels have kind of devolved into only running things that, are reality based, so anyways, or pseudoscience in my opinion, but having watched that and having gained some kind of understanding that, I went to the University of Northern Colorado for my undergrad, and I went there thinking that I'd be a biologist. I took biology, I think my first or second semester, and I was like, oh hell no, because it was all microbiology, and I wanted to deal stuff with animals, and then it just my third semester up there, I took a class in Colorado archaeology, and it became my professor, Dr. Brunswick, Dr. Robert Brunswick up there. He was the staff archaeologist at the university, and the next summer, I really fell in love with it. And then I took another class from him in the spring. And then that next summer, I joined him and volunteered up in Rocky Mountain National Park, doing archaeological survey. And that was really kind of the start of my career. So early, it was definitely archaeology. I turned 21 that summer, and the following summer I became a crew chief. I was running my own crews, going out doing surveys, and finding artifacts, finding features in a cool place like Rocky Mountain National Park, and leading crews. And then did that the following summer. So I was up there doing 3 summers up there, and then graduated in December of 2003, and then came back down to Denver and didn't get like a professional archaeology job or a private archaeology job until the kind of summer of 2004. And then after that, my career kind of took off. I got laid off because archaeology is very seasonal in many
Hmm.
respects, like especially when you're younger in the career. You get laid off a lot of the times at the end of the field season because there's just not any more office, there's not enough office work to sustain you. And then I moved over, and then they had another project come up, and then I got hired on full time and worked for that company for 8 years, and then started my own little company in 2012. And yeah, man, it's been just kind of off and on since then. Luckily, and that's the thing is like I guess to get to the full answer of the story. So I started in 2004 doing archaeology, and then in October of 2004 I started jiu-jitsu. So like I've been on this like kind of parallel path forever, in both realms. Like I definitely started archaeology earlier, but um, in the professional realm, getting out of college, that's those two career paths kind of took off. I started early, reffing early in jujitsu, so that like I started getting paid for that. So like I've had income from both realms for yeah, um, long time.
Yeah, and the parallels is an interesting understanding of jujitsu and life. And just because we do jujitsu doesn't mean that everything else is easy. Just because we just because we have a master's in archaeology and anthropology, it doesn't mean career is going to be easy, but it definitely makes us more resilient physically. But that doesn't necessarily even correlate to the next level of mental and emotional resiliency, spiritual resiliency, and then financial resiliency. Like my jujitsu bill, my membership is my third largest bill every month. I don't have a car payment, so it's rent, child support, and my jujitsu gym membership. Those are my three priorities, right? But it doesn't make anything else in my life easy.
Absolutely not. In all honesty, man, it's I I I constantly tell I tell my students this. This is a lifelong journey. This is something that I've devoted to doing the rest of my life. I'm constantly sharpening my sword, right? Like I don't feel that there's techniques in jiu-jitsu that I don't know, right? That I shouldn't know better than I already do. And I say that having done jiu-jitsu for 16 years. Like I say that having done moves that I still teach today for 16 years. Like one move that I've done for 16 years, and I still am like, I'm still refining this. I'm still figuring out ways that I can do this better. And you're totally right that I can say that in a jiu-jitsu sense, but it's only been in the last 2 to 3 years that I've had a much greater ability to start understanding the correlations between life and jiu-jitsu and how I can translate that resiliency and those other aspects into my mental work and into my life. Like, man, open up space for someone. What do I need to do when someone's on top of me and cross-eyed? Like, hey, I need to scoot my hips out. I need to create space so I can get a knee back in, so I can get back to some semblance of my guard, right? So, but to do that in life, to open up space to allow someone else to speak their mind and to, like really get a better understanding of where they're coming from, and then, holding that and processing that instead of being reactive, like, man, how many white belts do we see that are just like someone takes cross-eyed and then it's flop and flip and they do everything possible to get out, right? Expend a whole lot of energy. Well, as a 40-year-old adult, I still struggle with the reactiveness, like in real life. Like someone says something and like, I really want to react to it instead of just being like, take a breath, relax.
Mm-hmm.
You can deal with this. Like you do in jujitsu. For me, someone takes cross-eyed on me, even another black belt. Okay, I know I'm safe right now. I know I'm safe. Take a breath, calm down, relax, find the best avenue of escape, or have patience to let them move and then find your avenue of escape. Whereas in life, it's still, it doesn't always transcend, like you said.
Yeah. I'm really inspired that you started jiu-jitsu before becoming a father. I did it in the other way around. And jiu-jitsu probably would have had me more resilient as a father to face those opportunities to create space with my daughter.
Yeah, and like I said, man, it's been, it's been a struggle for me too. It's been a struggle for me personally to really allow some of that space for my kids. I by no means am I going to claim that I'm the perfect parent. I mean, honestly, I don't think that any parent ever will be able to. Like, as human beings, we all know that we're carrying all kinds of luggage. We're all carrying all kinds of wounds. Like, dude, from the time you're 0 to 5 years old, like, it doesn't matter how good the parent was. It doesn't matter, like, we're going to have wounds from that period, and then those wounds are going to carry with us for the rest of our lives. And that's, I guess, what we figure out as adults and younger adults is like, okay, I have wounds. That's not necessarily the fault of anyone, unless it was the fault of someone, but still,
Sure,
you know what
of
I'm
course.
saying,
Yeah.
right? But even in the perfect scenario, we're still going to have something that we have to process, something that we're going to have to deal with. We're all going to have, in a Jungian sense, we're all going to have a shadow. We're all going to have, you know what I mean? Like, we're all going to psychologically project. We're all going to create scapegoats. We're all going to do these things that, like, can impact and hurt others because of what we're carrying. I actually just am finishing up a really good book, The Four Agreements. I don't know if
Yep.
you've read that one,
Yep.
but it's and just like, that's what I've been reminding myself with this whole thing, like, with being a business owner in the pandemic is lovely.
We need to
I think
create some
you and I
space for
both,
ourselves. Yeah.
yeah, right. Like, woo, it has so many ups and downs, and it has so much uncertainty, and, everything along those lines. And one thing that I've been doing, as you and I both probably do, we keep track of the numbers because we're business owners. And,
Mm-hmm.
like, I just need to know, like, I need to be able to project if something's coming down the pipe or not. I'm not trying to get too involved in the fear, like the fear of things. I'm not getting involved. And, like, dude, honestly, I think that you and I both, I mean, in all transparency, I supposedly I already had it. I got a, you know, I had a serology test back in May that, came back with positive antibodies. So, every other test that I've gotten tested numerous times since then, just as a precaution for myself and, my student body. And all of them have come back negative. So, like, it's just one of those things that I think that that's just being a responsible person. And then on top of that, though, like, looking at the numbers and just trying to understand, like, where's my academy going to go? Like, how are we going to deal with some of these things? Like, how can I better be prepared than I was with the first, lockdown, for any possible lockdown, if there is one, and for you and I, like, the state just literally changed all the, like, what they were going to do anyway. Like, a bunch of the counties around us are starting to move to, now that they call level orange. And before, their statement was like, if you go to level orange, then everybody's got it. All gyms need to shut down and go virtual only. And then the, state health department came back and said, well, just 25% or 25 people, whatever's less. And,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so I'm very happy that we get to stay open and still operate, but yeah, man, I think that it's, with everything, it's just learning how to take that breath and understand, like, and getting back to the four agreements is, I'm doing the best that I can, right? Just do the best that you can. Like, I've got my protocols in place. I've got the best things that I can do to ensure the safety of my members, like, all those things. And that's all I can do. And all I can do is what I can do. And that's what I've been reminding my students of this week, with all the turmoil that's going on. And it's not even really turmoil. Some of it's manufactured turmoil, like, that we create these things for ourselves. But just reach out to somebody. To me, that's one of the most important things that we can do in this time, is just show some love for other individuals that we already know. You don't have to reach out to a stranger. You don't have to show something, but, like, how many of us are struggling? Including myself. How many of us are, have these racing thoughts or have these bouts of anxiety, like, we're human. We're not impervious. So, reach out to somebody and say like you love them, like reach out to somebody and tell them what it is about them that you really appreciate and that you really hold dear, like, man, that just alone it's going to go so far. And then that person might do that with one or two of their people, and then it's just the pass it on kind of mentality. And that's what I have control of, right? I have control of how I react to this stuff. I have control of what I can do with the people that I have surrounding me, and how we can, as a group, control what, right, they can do and reach out to somebody and help them better understand what, they may be going through. Like, dude, having a 10-minute conversation with somebody might be the difference between them, unfortunately, taking their own life or not.
Yeah, which is a real consideration in our time with skyrocketing mental health challenges in all demographics and age groups. No one is immune to it, and the more isolation that we have, the more challenging it gets. And
Bro, in the last 2 weeks, man, I've literally heard of 2 people close to me experience suicide in their lives. Just in the last 2 weeks.
that
Two
for
of
me
the
is,
people
yeah.
that are close to me, like 2 people that I hope that, like are involved in my life consistently. One of them just got back from a funeral, right? And the other one heard last week of one of his friends taking his own life. So it's not my place to obviously divulge any more than that, but like,
Yeah, of
man,
course.
that hurt me, so that's why I was like, man, I gotta, like, what can I do in my position?
Yep.
Hey, let's spread love, man. Let's really and truly, like, take some time to, like, just give a little bit of love to somebody. Forget all this divisiveness, forget all this other stuff. Like, that's manufactured by people that want us to feel that way
Yeah, sad,
in
isn't it?
reality.
Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't have to be the people that are in power right now. I mean, I'm talking globally. Like, there's other groups out there that would love for us to do what we're doing right now. So man, just get back to the roots. And that's just it. That's, to me, that's what the beauty of jiu-jitsu provides, is getting back to roots, getting back to an understanding of what we've lived as people for a much longer than what we've experienced in the last 250 years. Like like just how much the nuclear family has devolved in Western civilization, like, and how we look down upon people living in multi-generational homes. Like, no, man, that's like, that's the gold right there. Like, you get to have experiences and share those kinds of things with much more people than yourself, which is, I think, leading to the mental health crisis. We feel so isolated, we feel so alone, right? Like, nobody's going to care about me, no one's going to care if I just, like, off myself. And that's coming from someone who's, like, through my life I've had those struggles, right? Multiple times, man. I've had multiple bouts of depression through my life. So, and I had many times where, like, some of the best things were happening in my life. And on the flip side of that, like, dude was still thinking about ways to, like, is this the day? And how am I going to do it? You know? So it's, but really, man, like, using jujitsu to come back to a semblance of understanding of how people have lived for millions of years. If it doesn't matter what you believe, but, like, for me as an anthropologist and looking having studied what I've studied, I definitely, and our genes reflect that. There's all kinds of science that supports the fact that we, like, we've evolved from, Australopithecine and on down the way, Homo erectus, and you know and have eventually become anatomically modern human, and the way of life for those pastoralists and those horticulturalists and those hunter gatherers, like for us in the modern world, we have this really core idea, this like we see shows like Naked and Afraid or Alone on TV, and we're like, man, look at how hard those people are working. Like that would just suck to have to be in the environment that long. And like, oh my goodness. And we get to sit from the comfort of our home where literally everything's climate controlled in our lives, right? Like we get to choose how warm our car is. We get to choose how warm our house is. We get to choose like, and we literally spend all of 15 minutes outside in a given day, you know, like to be like, oh, well, and man, God, it's so warm outside, I hate it. Or God, it's so hot outside and I hate it. And it's like, or it's so cold outside and I hate it. It's like, you've spent all like 10 minutes outside today. Like, how can we really form this opinion of something that A, we have no control over, and B, like in reality, man, like we're doing okay. But through ethnographic analysis, you know, where cultural anthropologists and archaeologists went and they studied you know, in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, and they studied people that were still practicing hunter-gatherer, you know, lifestyles. And, you know, we really found that like the Kung is a great example. Did you ever see the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy?
Yes.
Right. So like back in the day, and then they find the Coke bottle and they start fighting over the Coke bottle and all that stuff. Right. So the Kung lived in the Serengeti in Africa, you know, and that's one of the harshest environments on the planet, you know. Droughts are common and lack of water, and they lived there, you know, and they thrived there. And most people would assume that, man, they had to just been working their tails off, like constantly going out to find, you know, to gather fruits and berries and, you know, tubular roots and everything. And then, man, they had to have been hunting all the time. But I'm going to ask you this question, Dave. Like, how many hours a week do you think, on average, those hunter-gatherers spent procuring their resources and actually working?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe 5, 10,
It's like on average 12 hours.
12 hours a week.
12 hours a week. You know what the rest of that time, the majority of the rest of that time was
Moving.
spent? No, it was sitting in camps, right? It was, yes, it was making some improvements to your camps, probably. It was, you know, spent leisurely making the necessities that you needed. But then it was all about story. It was all about community. It was all about ritual. It was all about ceremony, you know, and those were those true human connections. That's the way we lived. It doesn't matter where we come from the globe, man. It doesn't matter what, you know, culture we come from. All of us in our past have this, to where we relied on the land for our resources. We relied more on each other than we ever have.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't need to rely on you to procure my resources. Someone delivers it to my door. You know, like but as far as like, you know, our ability to self-sustain, man, it's something that is lost, you know. So for me, that's one step that jiu-jitsu provides. Jiu-jitsu provides that ability. And the other side is like we've taken the ability of people to fight and to get aggression out, you know, like in schools. Like think about, I know from personal experience being in, you know, a jiu-jitsu instructor. Like I've had several students who have gotten in altercations at schools to like literally defend themselves. They tell me the story of what happened, and they literally were attacked or bullied, and they decided to defend themselves, and they defended themselves in a very, what I view as a very responsible response, where they took the person down and held them down and didn't throw a strike, didn't throw a punch, didn't choke, didn't arm lock, nothing. Just got the attention of another adult, and they still got suspended. You know, like we're punishing people for having a reasonable response to, you know, having violence, you know, against them. And to me, like bringing some of that back, because you look at, so I don't know if you've ever read the book Black Elk Speaks. It's a really, really good book. If you're into ceremony, or if you're into Native American traditions, you know, like I highly recommend it, you know. It's but he speaks about how even, you know, like the Lakota, the preteens and teens would get on horses and play battle, like they would have that physical contact with each other. They would basically war. They would practice war, like the game lacrosse, right? Like, about lacrosse. Well, lacrosse is actually a Native American game. It was the Iroquois and, and some similar tribes in the Northeast America that formulated this game with a net and a ball, like a small circular rock. And they would, that's basically another form of warfare, right? So they could practice warfare, was a game that they played, to where there was physical contact. Like, this is all stuff that we've had for many generations, and now we're just like, can't touch each other, like we can be totally connected with this device, but like, man, you cannot, don't go near people.
Yep.
Right. And jiu-jitsu provides that, right?
It does. Yeah, I'm processing all of that storytelling that you're going through, and what comes to the surface for me is I started jiu-jitsu to overcome some claustrophobia and to get far outside my comfort zone, because I was always the little guy in school. I was always a little guy on my sports team. I was always a little guy in my friend group. So I wasn't able to defend myself as a kid because I didn't have the skills. And to ensure that I'd be able to protect myself as an adult, I found a safe environment, a controlled environment to learn those skills. And now, 4 years later, I don't even process the word claustrophobia. Yes, I still feel like a 205-pound opponent on my chest, and I'm like, this sucks. But I do know, like you said earlier, that I'm safe. He's not intentionally trying to hurt me, to physically harm me. He is competing against me, but it's just one way for me to be exposed to something really challenging and to trust myself that I can overcome.
Absolutely. And how many times have you spent time on the mat after jiu-jitsu? I mean, maybe not in this climate, but previous to the pandemic, like, how much time have you spent on the mat? Like an hour, sometimes, like just sitting there rapping with teammates, sitting there talking to the professor, like hearing stories of them getting ready for competitions, or like hearing stories from their lives. Like, that's the other realm. That's the other side. Is like, a student said yesterday, he was like, man, I work from home all the time, and like, with it being the pandemic, I'm not going to see anybody. Like, this is literally my socialization every day. Like, me coming in here is where I get my socialization. This is where I get to actually talk to other human beings outside of my workplace, over a computer screen. He's like, I love coming in here because of that.
I need it, like for my stability, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I need that routine and I need that ritual, which is something that I've brought into my life willingly. I'm a willing participant of, okay, I'll be your uki. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be your training partner, even though I'm scared to death of 250 pounds on me, but I'm willing to create this ritual and a bond between a teammate that only wants the best for me. There are two blue belts in our school that we're monogamously training. So we have 3 to 4 to 5 training partners 3 days a week, and each of us get to know each other really well. And there's a blue belt that I'm like, in a sparring round, I look at him and I say, hey man, there's an armbar right there. Cause he was struggling with looking for bow and arrow. And I'm okay, well, if it's not here, then it's there. But I know that we don't get that community time after class on the mat where I could mention that to him. But like in the middle, if I'm paused and comfortable and under control and he's going for something, I see it's not there, but I know where I'm weak. Hey man, the armbar is there,
Yeah, absolutely. I told my students the other day, like, I can't wait to train with them again. Because like we have our little coaches pod, basically, like that the coaches are basically the ones that like interact with each other, and then there's different pods where the students interact with each other and there's no cross contamination. I think it's just the way that most of us, a lot of our community is operating at this time. At least well, it's not for me to say anyway, but yeah, I think that in that sense, like, we have two female coaches and, they're both smaller individuals and I'm not the smallest individual in the world. Like I'm 220 pounds, like almost 6'4". So, like one of them is like 105 pounds maybe. And then other one's like a little more than that. So, they're both, rolling with us constantly. My business partner, Ruben, he's a larger individual also. And then we have Adam Maslak, who's another one of our black belts that, teaches at the academy, and he's 209 pounds, 210 pounds. Like, so that's who they're constantly rolling with. And I was telling, one of our coaches, Selena, last night, I was like, I can't wait to see like you roll with some of those newer white belts, like I can't wait to see their faces and their egos just get slaughtered by like a little 105 pound purple belt, like that's going to be amazing to me because they get to see and feel the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu. That's really what it is. To me, I focus, yes, it's an ego killer, but that's up to that person to deal with that, right? The killing of their ego.
To take it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. But what it really is it's really showing the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu. It's really, illustrating how technique and leverage is the key, right? That strength and power, like, man, anybody can have strength and power, but there's always going to be somebody that has more strength, technique and leverage than you. And if they know the technique and leverage, it doesn't matter how much strength and power you have. Now it's when you get to other realms, right? When you have all the strength and power and you have the technique and leverage. But again, that's where it becomes more of like, how much restraint can I have? Hey, I've got those things in my back pocket all the time. I've got athleticism, I've got strength, I've got power, I've got, my explosiveness. But when should I use that? Because now, like because of how much technique and leverage I have, right? Like, and that's the balance. That's as you learn and progress in jiu-jitsu, you understand those things. You understand where that balance lies. Whereas like that me included, my brand new white belt self, a long time ago, like it was all balls to the wall, flopping like a fish, like there's always the joke in jiu-jitsu that if you want to know what a street fight's like, roll with the brand new white belt.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a check your ego moment just on Wednesday night with a white belt teammate of mine. And we roll consistently, a little spazzy, but he's getting better as he gains experience. And he's attempting really, really diligently to finish a leg lock on me, a straight ankle lock. And I was in the moment thinking, don't tap to this white belt who's attempting with average technique to finish this leg lock. And I got to the point of like, well, my coaches always tell me that if I feel unsafe because somebody else's technique is not quite finessed enough to do it safely, tap before the knee blows out, and that phrase went through my mind of like safety over ego, because if I blow out my knee, I can't train. And if I blow out my knee, he learns nothing. So afterward I said, hey, you know what? Honestly, I did not tap to the leg lock. I tapped to the safety of it. If you're trying that hard to finish it, it's probably not there. Let's move on. And I felt that was me experiencing ego in the moment, staying present enough on the mat so that I didn't get hurt, and being conscious of it enough not to react, get frustrated with somebody else where I used to be there. I was just like him.
And that's the biggest reminder that we all need to carry in jiu-jitsu is like, that's, to me, one of the most important things that I think that for myself I've done through my career is I never forgot what it was like to be a white belt.
Yeah, we have this white belt mentality outside of the school too. Always be learning, or even as a blue belt 4 years in, and I hope, I think I've heard you say this before, of white belt mentality. What else can you learn about a technique you've been doing for 16 years with fresh eyes and fresh mind and a fresh perspective, like a brand new white belt?
Dude, and I love being a white belt in other aspects of my life. Like you mentioned, like I've taken up photography again recently, and like being like starting from scratch, like, man, it's amazing. And it's amazing to be the student again, like, because we're all black belts in other realms. And that's the other thing that I tell students too, is like, man, you might not be a black belt in here, but there's there's at least one or two other aspects that you are. Like I know that we have a purple belt student that's, dude, he's a master fly fisherman, like that dude is like, that's a black belt like that's where your black belt is. I can learn something from you, and that's the other side of the coin, is like, if in life we take that jujitsu approach, to like, you can learn something from someone, right? And like, I can even learn something from a white belt, even in jujitsu on the mat. I can see, like, because it's raw, right? Their reactions are so raw and it's so pure to just be a reaction, because they're not playing the game of jiu-jitsu yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, otherwise, once you get a blue belt, like, you pretty much know the game of jiu-jitsu. You understand, like, and it's in this little box, and like when you roll with someone else, like in that realm, it's pretty much that box until something new comes in. Like if you start throwing strikes, then like I've seen people that have black belts literally, like, they don't know jiu-jitsu anymore. you know it completely goes right, like some of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff goes right out the window, because now we're getting punched in the face, like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the famous Mike Tyson quote, that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face,
That's
you
right.
know um so in that sense, like, yeah, it's that's what makes jiu-jitsu so much fun, man, is like, it's infinite. It's not infinite because of what our bodies do. I mean, we might have statistically, small variations in joint flexibility, but all our joints, like our elbows, all bend the same way. Like, there's not people out there that have, elbows that bend the opposite way. Like if you apply that arm lock, that they might have a little more flexibility, but at some point something's gonna break, something's gonna, right, rupture. It's not gonna be good for them. But what makes jiu-jitsu infinite is here, like our minds, what you perceive in jiu-jitsu and like your previous experience in life, that like things that you just get drawn to. I'm sure in your jiu-jitsu career, like as you learned, there were some things that like took longer to learn, and there's some things that were just like made sense to you for some reason, some neurological thing, some neural pathway that you would already, like done in some realm somewhere else. Like it just created a little bit of a shortcut to where your mind was like, yeah, that little light bulb moment, and was like, oh, okay, like I get that. I understand where I need to go with that. And then that's something that's a part of your game as a blue belt now, right? Like it's something that you go to often. It's something that you recall more easily. And then there's still the other realms that you need to work on more, that you need to have a better understanding of. Sometimes I have squirrel moments, so I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. I do want to pick your brain on how important the lineage and culture is. You and I have the connection of Dave Ruiz as an instructor and a black belt in our lineage. How important is that to reflect and stay connected within the culture of where you've come from the last 16 years?
For me, I'm very proud to have been a white belt to black belt under one person. To have that consistency in instruction. I started early enough in jiu-jitsu that, like I remember the times when, oh man, did you hear that Marcelo's X-Guard DVD's coming out? And we wouldn't have like information for months, like it would be 6 months to a year before like a new DVD set would come out, and we'd be like, and everybody would rip it and share it in the academy, or or whatever it was. Now, like we're inundated, and this is every aspect of life. We're inundated with information. You know, we're constantly getting a notification. We're constantly getting distracted by something. You know, like in I love how enthusiastic people are in jiu-jitsu in the beginning. I love it. But at the same time, I also try to remind them, like, if you learn a kimura and you learn that kimura at the very beginning from 8 or 9 or 12 different instructors, like meaning the internet, how good is that understanding of that kimura going to be? Because literally what's going to happen is your mind, like like thought process wise, your mind's going to come to a block, because it's going to try to process all those different forms of that kimura all into one moment to where you see it, and then it's going to pass, because you don't know what to do from there, because you say, well, this guy said to grab like that, and that guy said to grab like this. Yeah. And you have all this conflicting information. So to me, it's very vital to have that consistency of instruction in the beginning, right? Like, for me personally, some of it was availability. I mean, when I started jiu-jitsu, I think there was like 3 or 4 black belts in the entire state of Colorado, which is crazy to think about, that like we have well over 100 now, you know. That's how much jiu-jitsu kind of grown. But like that consistency was so important. I didn't start stepping out from learning from Dave in many senses other than seminars until I was a purple belt. You know, like the consistency in seeing it taught the same way. And now, like, and I think that as a purple belt, you're a black belt in disguise, right? Like the amount of time, the amount of devotion, dedication, hours spent on the mat, like, dude, all you need is a few more pieces and some refinement, which is like the rest of your purple belt and your brown belt, and then you get a black belt. Like, so as a purple belt, you have the ability, because of how many times you've failed at something, because how many times you've repetitiously failed at getting it, you have a much better understanding for yourself how to do a kimura on different types of bodies. And then you can see another person teach it, and you can say, ooh, that's a good piece. That's a small, oh man, I haven't seen that variation of it. But at first, dude, all you see is like 12 different kimuras, and you don't know which piece is going to fit where and what you should do. And it's just like, it just creates this muddled mess, right? So that's my 2 cents on on that realm of jiu-jitsu. But getting back to your initial question, I told you I go on little tangents, but
squirrels, they're real.
they're everywhere, man. I love this stuff. I get really excited about jiu-jitsu, right? And for me, knowing, and that leads it, that definitely relates to the conversation and the question, but to have an understanding of where we come from. For me, understanding where Dave came from, for, you know, anyone else understanding what their lineage is, understanding how close we are to the source. And I know that there's all kinds of different sources. I'm not saying that like, oh, I like kneel down to any, you know what I mean? Like, I think that, like, man, I'll put it this way, in my own life, I'm not a fan of anyone, because fan is short for fanatic. I'm not fanatical about any other human being, because I know that human beings are inherently flawed, right? Like, and like, I respect their game. I respect what they do in life. I respect their point of view, but I'm not an inherent fan of anyone. Like, I don't get fanatical, because I think that's where you cross kind of a line mentally, right? Like, so, but I am proud of where I personally come from. I'm proud of that you've had, you know, similar lineage in the beginning of your career also, like understanding like, hey, Dave was at the Gracie Academy in 93. He, you know, was one of the first Americans to be inducted in an instructor's program there. You know, if you're familiar with Mauricio Zingano, you know, like my business partner, Ruben, he started under Mauricio. Mauricio and Dave were best friends. Them and Eric Meyer, who still lives out in California, they all started there. They all lived together. They all trained together. They all represented the Gracie Academy in challenge matches as blue belts, like, could you, man, that's the wild, wild west of jiu-jitsu, the early 90s, where it's still like just open forum. Like, I know this deadly form of karate and I'm going to go into your academy and I'm going to challenge you. And and the family being like, Dave, you're up. Like, go represent us, go fight this dude. And oh, by the way, we don't want you to actually punch him, like just open hand slap him and show him the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu. So understanding that's the realm that we kind of come from. And that's, like how those early folks, like the John Crouches and the Burks and the, like the Magalese brothers and, all of those guys that were there, with Dave, like I said, Eric Meyer, Mauricio, like, that first kind of group of people that they started to pour information into, like, and the way that all those gentlemen took it, like, in all honesty, those first American black belts, right? Those, even outside of the Gracie Academy, like, those are the guys that if it was me or them in a dark alley, like, I'm going to have a nice day. Like, they might all be in their 50s or close to 60s, and I'm like, that's the last generation of jiu-jitsu folks, like, that I would ever want to mess with, like, those guys fought all the time. Whereas now I feel that there's definitely more like more division between, like, jiu-jitsu is that core martial art to, like, now be, more like there is this sport realm. And then, and I feel very fortunate that we came up in that realm of, like, all three, what I see as three phases, what I was taught as three phases, like self-defense, Vale Tudo, the fighting aspect of jiu-jitsu, and the sport aspect, so and just compartmentalizing those things, understanding that, like, this is what I would use in this realm. This is what I would use here. This is what I would use here. Oh, here's something that I can use across all boards, but this one thing over here is definitely not something that I would use over here. Like, just, having compartmentalization in that realm, I think is vital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And, Robert, I know that your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you spending it with me today. And
Absolutely.
I'll have to come visit the academy at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait till that time comes where we can, get back to running some open mats and, like, because that's the other side of this whole coin, man, is it's not just each academy, right? Like, sometimes at competitions we go and we represent our academies and it's that, form of tribalism. But at the same time, like, even there's the, like, man, you compete against somebody and what's that like? Like, dude, oh man, I loved how you, like, even if you lost, like, man, you really caught me with that. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like, man, we got to get back together again and roll, because I really like to, you know what I mean? I really have appreciation for your game.
Mm-hmm.
In that larger community sense, man, is the other side to the jiu-jitsu coin, right?
It
It's
is.
not just always about who you train with at the academy. So I appreciate this time, that your time also, Dave, and thank you for having me on. And I hope that this conversation helps someone, right? Like, that we have, the ability to impact others, because really that's at the root of me, man. That's what it really is about, like, is teaching jiu-jitsu in the sense that, like, somebody gets to learn more about themselves. I always tell my students, like, all I'm doing is shining a light on the path. I'm not the end all be all. I'm not the master of jiu-jitsu. I just happen to know more than you do from the years that I've spent, right? And here I'm just going to shine a light on the path. But the greatest thing is you have to walk it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I can't walk it for you.
Yeah, and that truth might change in the future. One of your students, one of my teammates, will eventually surpass and know more than I do, and know more than yourself. And we wish that for them.
Oh, it's I'm training a bunch of pit vipers to, eventually bite me, right? Like, that's what I want. I want to get bit one day, right? And the other side to that coin too is that's honestly my legacy. My legacy is the passing on of this information. That was Dave's legacy to me. you know, and his other people that teach in a similar way, you
Mm,
know, and that's what it's all about. That's what the Gracie family legacy is, right? That's what, you know, the Machados, anybody that's involved, like, and passes this information on, like, that's the getting back to that whole aspect of hunter-gatherer society where we're passing on oral traditions, man, like, that's literally what we're doing in jiu-jitsu.
yeah. Yeah. It feels authentic and it feels organic and it feels like we belong to something greater than ourselves.
Because we are, right? That's the best part. So
Yeah.
um yeah, man, I appreciate your time. I hope that you have a great day. And thank you again for having me on. Thanks for making time for me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you again, Robert. Oh,
Okay.
and if there's a way that people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
So the Academy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Arvada website, my email is robert@arvadajujitsu.com. Robert or WonderBJJ99 is my Instagram handle. You can find me on Facebook. Generally, I'm like right now, man, I've kind of honestly, like, you can hit me up on Messenger. I probably won't respond to any posts. I've pretty much silenced most of Facebook at this time.
That's great.
There's too much stuff going on with that. For me personally, others can enjoy and have whatever they want, but otherwise, man, in the Shuckin' Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Association. So I've got two schools that are under me here in Denver. Limitless MMA, profound or Limitless Martial Arts, excuse me, and Profound Fitness. They're both affiliates of mine under the Shuckin' Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Association. And I also have two schools up in Wyoming, one in Rock Springs, Wild Faction, and the other Western Plains Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Gillette, Wyoming. So if you want to reach out to me, or if you're ever traveling in those areas, just know, like, those are safe places. You know, I know that they always open their doors for everyone to come in. So yeah, man, I appreciate it. And again, I'm available, right? Like, that's the other side of the coin. I don't mind having a 5-10 minute, 20-minute conversation with somebody. You know, if you're struggling with something, or if you want more information about something, like, man, like, reach out. I think that, being open in this time is vital.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, because yeah, people are going through some stuff, man. So
they
I
are.
think that helping anybody that we can is going to be vital. So
Yeah, I completely agree. And thanks for saying that. It goes a long way to help others understand that there's support.
yeah, community. I mean, jujitsu is a community, and, like, that doesn't mean that that we can't expand out to the community that's outside our own. So
Hmm.
um, bringing people together is way more vital in my mind than tearing people apart. So let's keep on moving forward.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Robert.
Appreciate
Talk
it.
to you soon.
Have a great day, bro.
You also.